organisation was founded over 30 years ago now in Coventry by a former Lord Mayor of Coventry, David Kearns, and we've just gone from strength to strength over the years.
The fundamentals is there are so many options, and it's about finding out the best one for that couple.
And this is why I would say come and seek specialist advice, and potentially the earlier you do that, because you can then just weigh up your options.
It's all right to look at it like a business transaction. It doesn't have to be lovey.
It's wonderful to see you now in the position that you very firmly deserve to be head of family law here at Ward and Ryder.
Heritage is important for the children, and the courts respect that. And trying to change that is too confusing for a child. They need that stability. They need to know where they've come from as well. Tax benefits, there's all sorts of benefits from being married. If a grandparent wanted to have a specific amount of time with a child, they would have to ask for permission to make that application.
Done more and more work with the Irish community over the years. It's a very natural progression for me.
A stranger cannot decide what is right for every single family. It's just not going to work.
It's so nice to catch up with you, Melanie, because you and I go way back, don't we? So just for the people listening, I'll introduce myself properly. My name is Caroline Brogan, and I used to work with you, didn't I, Melanie, many, many years ago.
It's about 17 years ago.
No,
I think it is. That's how long we've been doing the job.
Yeah. I feel like I need to challenge that, but actually the maths is stacking up there. But it's wonderful to see you now in the position that you very, firmly deserve to be head of family law here at Ward and Ryder.
Thank you.
And it's wonderful for me to have a catch up with you. I'm now working at the Coventry Irish Society. That's where my career pathway has taken me. So I've always been very interested in community work, and I used to run pro bono free legal advice clinics for many years when I was working over in Birmingham. And I've done more and more work with the Irish community over the years. So it's a very natural progression for me to come back over to Coventry. And I'm now based at the Coventry Irish Society. And as you might know, we've got a huge Irish community in Coventry. I saw some stats recently that had come from Irish in Britain, which say there are 40,000 people in the Midlands with some form of Irish connection.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
It's huge, and I'm really, really proud of the vibrant community that we've got. So our organisation was founded over 30 years ago now in Coventry by a former Lord Mayor of Coventry, David Kearns, and we've just gone from strength to strength over the years. So there's lots of culture and heritage events going on, from Irish language, Irish music, and that's through all generations. And we've got 3 big GAA sports clubs here in Coventry as well, who are just all going from strength to strength.
What's the GAA?
Well, that's the Gaelic Athletic Association.
Oh,
so that's another on our to-do list. I'll be bringing you over to some of the games, a bit of hurling, bit of Gaelic football. And it's all ages, and it's wonderful to see little ones come through and really embracing their heritage. And on a day-to-day basis at the Coventry Irish Society, we represent and support a wide variety of people across the community. So we've got a wonderful service that we provide, dementia care support. We do wellness walks. We have language conversation groups who meet up. We have a support service for survivors who have been in institutions in Ireland, so it's more commonly known as mother and baby homes, and that there's quite a lot going on at the moment, getting laws changed about enabling people to have better access to compensation schemes in respect of those institutions. And we also have casework that we deal with on a day in, day out basis. And that can be all sorts of things, people coming to us for support, perhaps with things like blue badge applications, applying for benefits, issues with housing. So there's a whole wide variety of help that people need. And it's always helpful for us to expand our own knowledge, and also to meet with experts like yourself, because we do get people with quite technical queries sometimes asking about implications for them if they're moving back to Ireland, and in particular about family situations. So
Yes.
I don't know if you can tell us, Melanie, a bit more about what you do in terms of the family law that you support with.
Yeah, we help all those married, unmarried couples, anyone who's thinking about getting married, who needs a prenup, children disputes, those who are suffering from violence or all types of abuse. So there's so many different things. The whole amount of family law, that is pretty much the whole breadth of family law is what we cover. And we have clients all over the country, and we do actually have quite a few who have assets or properties, pensions in Ireland, and who have Irish connections. And I think it's because we're very much in the community. We've been here for nearly 80 years as well in Coventry, so we have that reputation. A lot of people come back to us, and I think they've got those Irish roots that you've talked about, and they like to just stay with the same firm, and we help them with their property disputes and purchasing properties, and then we'll help with their grandchildren's property purchase. So it goes on, and obviously with wills and everything else. So we can cover all of that here. But I think a lot of what we see is how to protect those assets abroad, because people don't like to sell the properties that they've got in Ireland. They like it to go back at least once a year, don't they? And kind of, it's just such a beautiful place. But people like. I know. Otherwise, we'll be plugging the holidays around Ireland. But it is so beautiful that you do want to stick to it. I know I personally like to go back to Dublin and know where my grandparents have come from. And it's something about it. So keeping those assets and working out how you're going to keep those assets in a divorce settlement, for example, can be quite tricky, especially if there's one person who's not Irish. And you have to kind of understand the sentimental value of these things.
Absolutely. I have worked in family law myself, so I'm finding this fascinating. But what I've seen sort of standing on the sidelines, the evolution of family law, that there's much more of an emphasis on mediation. And my understanding is the processes have changed. So you can't just go, say, straight for a divorce. You would now go through a mediation process. Is that right?
Yeah, so you can apply for the divorce easily now because there's the no faults divorce, but sorting out the finances, you're always encouraged to look elsewhere. So can you go to mediation and sort it out outside of court, or can you work it out collaboratively, which is what I specialise in, the collaborative process, working it out in a meeting, in a four-way meeting, which I just think is brilliant for families, because especially if you're parents, just to work it out around a table in a few meetings, rather than have a battle of those letters going back and forth and creating that horrible tension. It's just not what children need to see. They need to see the parents working together. So that's what I'm all for. But I've had it on a case recently, actually, where we had to deal with an Irish pension and an Irish property, and the systems in place for dealing with those assets are different than what would be here. And we had to go and ask the trustees for permission and fill out certain forms for a pension share for an Irish pension. So it was slightly different than what we would experience here. It was a learning curve, but it was really useful because people now invest in all different sorts of pensions, and they keep these pensions, don't they, for many, many years. They almost forget that they've got them when they used to live in Ireland or something. They've come over here now and they're thinking, oh, hang on a minute, how am I going to deal with this? But it's an important asset and it needs to be dealt with properly. So that's something that I actually did enjoy working on. But yes, it can be quite complicated, I think, with all the emotions around family law. But if you deal with it in a really simple, informal way from the outset, having the focus of the children maybe in your mind, it can be dealt with really quite simply, actually, and sensitively. It's just really, how you start the process, I think, is key.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And I think you've just used a really key phrase there about the focus on the children. So how are children protected in separation arrangements? Can parents just, if they're on good terms, can they get together and say, this is what we want to do? You're having the kids Monday night and every second weekend.
Yes.
And how's all that managed?
It should be about parents making decisions together. That's how it should be. They know what works on the ground for their family. Every family is different. We all have our
Yeah.
have different routines, don't we, and everything. And some people work away in the week, and you've got to deal with all of that. A stranger cannot decide what is right for every single family. It's just not going to work. So if they can sort it out between them, brilliant. And that's what I love doing in the collaborative process. But they can in mediation. They can do it around, go to a coffee shop and sort out the child arrangements. And then it can be put into a parenting plan or it can be put into an order. But, for them to be in control of that is vital.
I was just going to ask you about that because it's all very well maybe getting to the agreement, maybe with the best intentions in the world. But I know when I was a junior solicitor, my supervisor saying to me, but it's the what if this isn't, the agreement's not stuck to, what happens next? He used to say, where's the teeth in this? So how do you formalise that? Like you've mentioned, would you have an agreement, going to court, or if your partner just will not sit around the table with you, and maybe you shouldn't be sitting around a table with them. Maybe it's been a really, really awful situation for so many reasons. What's the process in that sort of situation?
If it's not going to work being around a table, or somebody might feel a little bit cornered, then it's going to have to go to court. And the children's interests will always come first. What's in their best interest? 9 times out of 10, it's to see both parties, isn't it? Both parents. So we work that out. We put it into an order. If they can agree it and it just goes into a parenting agreement and all seems fine, then it doesn't need to go into an order. If there's going to be some disagreements down the line, then maybe it should go into an order. So then you have got something that you can enforce. But I think, again, for the majority of cases, once you've gone through that trauma of a breakup and you're now just trying to move on to the next chapter in your lives and co-parent together, actually the dust has settled. You can work together with a parenting agreement, setting those boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right there, Melanie. It's about setting the boundaries and also just having that agreement, but also just being able to move on to the next chapter. Something I'd like to ask you about is really about grandparents, because we see a lot of people who are almost standing on the sidelines watching their own grown-up children going through a separation.
It's been hard.
And they want to know what rights they have, particularly involved, access to children. What would you say about that?
So the parents' contact, I suppose, always comes first in the courts. So they don't necessarily have to ask for permission to make an application. If a grandparent wanted to have a specific amount of time with a child, they would have to ask for permission to make that application. But they can, if they can say, I'm used to seeing Billy and George twice a week, or they've been living with me for some time, they should easily be able to be granted that permission, and then they can apply and we can consider how often they should be seeing the child.
Oh, that's really useful to know.
Because a wider family is important.
Yeah,
especially when it
absolutely.
comes to understanding your heritage, which I know a lot of families, I'm sure, who you work with, it'll be important to them. And we find that out a lot as well, because we act for all different, all communities. And their heritage is important for the children. And the courts respect that. And trying to change that is too confusing for a child. They need that stability. They need to know where they've come from as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing I sort of mentioned earlier about the identity, whether it's your GAA heritage, which is very unique to being Irish, and language. Identity is just so important.
Yes.
Another question we get asked by people who come to see us is, what is the situation if somebody has decided they're going to get separated, but they don't want to get divorced for whatever reason? I guess I'm asking, do they have to get divorced? Is the law saying, look, you're together or you're not? Or is there some sort of middle ground? Maybe if you've got to deal with a property, what are their options?
You can have a judicial separation. So it's a formal separation, and then you would just divide the assets and the finances. You can stay married and just divide the assets. There are tax benefits. There's all sorts of benefits from being married. So in some respects, therefore reasons why you may not want to be married. And I would always recommend actually a clean break.
Mm.
In some situations, though, people are running a company together, and you can't have that clean break. Or they might have rental property where the rent comes into a joint account. There's all different sorts of examples that I can give you that we have to deal with. So every case is different. That's why we have to offer a bespoke service. But the fundamentals is there are so many options, and it's about finding out the best one for that couple.
Right, that's interesting to know.
Does that probably
Yeah.
doesn't answer your question?
No, well, it's just such a vast subject, and this is why we'd always say every case is different.
Yeah.
And there isn't going to be a one size fits all, because every family is different and every person is different as well. And this is why we'd say come and seek specialist advice, and potentially the earlier you do that, because you can then just weigh up your options that suit you. My last question, Melanie, was about prenups. Now, I first heard about these, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, and it seemed like it was only for the rich and famous.
No.
Do you see people coming in now saying they want a prenup?
Yes, a lot. And
Really?
some people think they can just do it 3 weeks before the wedding.
Oh, right.
I'm like the prenup queen here. So I get quite passionate about these documents, because if they're done right, and they should easily be done right now, you can just, you both have a solicitor.
Yeah.
Think about it a few months before, a good few months at least before the wedding. You have, it's show and tell. These are all of my assets. What do we want to protect? And the document, then, if it's drafted correctly, after going through all those steps, it will be binding. We always say to have a will in place which complements the prenup.
Right. Yeah.
If you're tithinking about it a few weeks before the wedding, get married, enjoy that, and then come to me afterwards for a post-nup. And we'll have the same, but it'd be obviously post-nuptials.
Right, that makes sense.
And that would have the same effect. But you've got to have disclosure. You've got to be open and honest about it. But we deal with them a lot when there's big company structures in place, different assets. Even if you've just got one house, even if you've got nothing, but you think you might inherit, that's fine. Get a prenup.
That's
Because
really
it's all
good
right
point,
to look at it like a business transaction. It doesn't have to be lovey-dovey,
I was just going to say that, because it does feel like, where's the romance in all this? But I guess if I was going into a business relationship with somebody, you would do your due diligence. You would sit here and then that potentially takes a lot of heartache away further down the line. And for me, I think I'd probably trust somebody more that you've had that at the outset.
Yes, and I think it is very, very difficult to have these discussions. A lot of people do get divorced. The stats are high with that. A lot of people now are not marrying for that reason. And a lot of people are also becoming more protective over their assets. So these are all reasons why, actually, I think a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement is really important. And for me, the best way of dealing with it is in the collaborative process. Because the last thing you want to be doing when you're organising your wedding favours or whatever is then having to think, what are we doing with clause 18 or whatever in this prenup? It's just a horrid conversation when it should be the happiest time, shouldn't it, of your life. So sorting it out in a meeting just keeps it focused for that morning. We can get so much more done instead of letters going back and forth. And then you can go home and pick your wedding cake then and carry on with the wedding preparations. It's just much better.
All the nice stuff.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much for giving us that sort of walk through. But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface, really. But it's been really, really useful for me to build on my knowledge database. And it gives us an idea of the issues that can arise in family situations, which is really useful for us to know. So thank you so much.
Thank you for coming in.
And it's just so wonderful to catch up with you.